The phone conversation ended with the same familiar sinking feeling. I had just agreed to host a dinner party for 12 people in my tiny apartment on a Thursday, when I had a major work deadline the next day, for people I barely knew, and I was already exhausted. For over 30 years, my default response to any request was an automatic yes, regardless of the cost to my time, energy, or well-being. My entire identity was built around being helpful, available, and accommodating. The perfect employee who never said no to additional projects. The reliable friend who would drop everything to solve your crisis. The family member who arranged every holiday and remembered every birthday. The partner who never complained and always compromised. On paper, I was the ideal person to have in your life, always saying yes, always putting others first, always smoothing things over. But beneath this perfectly helpful exterior, resentment was building. I would agree to things I didn't want to do, then feel angry about doing them. I kept a mental scorecard of all I had done for others, growing bitter when they didn't reciprocate at the same level. My relationships felt increasingly hollow. Despite being surrounded by people who seemed to need me, I felt deeply alone. No one actually knew me because I never showed them what I truly wanted or needed. I was a supporting character in my own life. Everything changed during a routine therapy session. I was complaining about feeling overwhelmed with commitments when my therapist asked a question that stopped me cold. What are you afraid would happen if you said no? The question unleashed a flood of fears I had never articulated. That people would stop liking me. That I would be seen as selfish. That I wouldn't be needed anymore. That without being helpful, I had no value. That underlying all my people-pleasing was a belief that I wasn't enough just as myself. This realization began a painful but transformative year of learning to set boundaries. I started with small steps, waiting 24 hours before responding to requests, asking myself what I actually wanted instead of automatically considering others first, practicing simple phrases like, "I can't take that on right now," or "that doesn't work for me." Each small no was terrifying. My heart would race, my voice would shake. I was convinced relationships would end. The reality was both harder and easier than I expected. Some people were surprised by my new boundaries. Some pushed back, trying to trigger my guilt. A few relationships that had been built entirely on my people-pleasing did fall away, but most adjusted to the new dynamic, and something unexpected happened. As I became more honest about my needs and limits, my connections with others deepened. For the first time, my relationships were based on mutual respect, rather than what I could do for others. 6 months into this boundary practice, I noticed something remarkable. Not only were my relationships changing, but I was changing too. The constant anxiety that had been my companion for decades began to lift. The resentment that had colored my interactions faded. I had more energy for the commitments I genuinely wanted to make. Most surprisingly, I discovered parts of myself I had never allowed to develop. Interests, opinions, and desires that had been buried under the constant weight of pleasing others emerged. The truth I wish someone had told me years ago is that people-pleasing isn't actually about being kind. It's about fear. Fear of rejection. Fear of conflict. Fear of not being enough. Real connection can never grow from fear. It requires the courage to be seen as you truly are, needs and limits included. When you build relationships on authenticity, rather than accommodation, you create space for genuine connection. What small boundary could you set today? What tiny, trembling no might lead to more honest relationships? The people who truly belong in your life don't want your endless accommodation. They want the real you, complete with needs, limits, opinions, and desires. Your authenticity is the greatest gift you can offer in any relationship.